Welcome back for another podcast episode where we try to bring in different professionals and different aspiring developers to basically give you as much advice as we can to help you get a position as a developer. So today I have with me Hamad. Hamad, welcome. Hamad has been in the tech industry and has been even recruiting for a very long time. But I'd love to give the floor to you to kind of give a little introduction to our audience.
Well, thank you so much, Don. Hello, everyone. My name is Hamad Mapara. As Don said, I have been in the technology recruitment industry since the past 15 years now. So I really started in that mainframe DB2 era and kind of progressed from there. As we say on our side of the business, I have been in the business of recruiting, sourcing, and recruiting yellow and magenta squirrels. Purple squirrels are gone. It's more of a yellow and magenta squirrels now. Over the course of years, I have worn multiple hats. I myself is a technical guy. I understand the technology both on .NET, Java platforms. I work as a program manager and project manager as well. I've been a partner in a company based in Pakistan, and most of the technology project we take or most of our clients are either in Pakistan and in the Middle East, like the UAE or GCC countries. Here in the US, I spend still a lot of time in recruitment, in technical recruitment, and one of the things I do absolutely free of cost is mentoring the emerging professionals, whether they are application developers, application architects, or anything within the IT arena. I mentor them, I coach them in terms of what to do, what not to do, who to approach, where to approach. Even I kind of like help people who are in that soul searching mode, if you will. Folks who started off as BAs and QAs and really looking for some level of direction. So I've done that. I've been doing that as well since many years now. Especially when sitting on the other side of the fence here as a recruiter, I can give them a lot of insights in terms of how to prepare for interview, to how to make your resume visible, how to outline your accomplishments, whatnot within the resume, and how to become the recruiter's favorite.
Interesting. The recruiter's favorite. I never heard that before. I guess a recruiter does have to have a favorite. But I think that was one of the.
Absolutely.
I think that was one of the more intriguing things about you is the mentorship that you have done on the side. I think that speaks a lot to someone's character, and I think it really does say a lot when you do meet someone else that does provide their free time to give back. I think that's a really positive thing. So that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on and talk with you. So I'd like to talk about a couple main topics. One, and I'm just going to be very blunt with it. I think developers have gained a lot of frustration with agency recruiters, and they are a real part of the job process, and they are always an option. And so what I want to do is kind of dive into those frustrations and see if the solution, really is to how can you be the best candidate for recruiters, for those recruiters to be effective for your job process, or how do you even find the right recruiter? Is that the solution, right? So I want to dive a little bit into that, and then we can kind of follow up with really some insights into the tech industry. It sounds like you've had a tremendous amount of experience, and I think a lot of people would really appreciate just off the cuff advice that you have for them. So yeah,
Absolutely.
let's dive right into this. So the spam. So let's talk about the spam on LinkedIn specifically. So I think as a developer, and you start noticing this as the years go on, is you're going to get more messages from recruiters. You are going to some of them are going to be quality messages. Some of them are going to clearly show that they've read your profile. They've done a little bit of research on you, and the majority end up looking kind of like a blast, where they've just messaged a lot of people, and you'll get Java positions when Java isn't even listed in your LinkedIn profile. You'll get you might even get like just different positions that aren't quite developer positions when your experience strictly speaks to developer. You can have a blog post, you can have a video talking about how much you love programming and building applications, and it doesn't matter. None of that's red. Like that position just doesn't match your experience. So let's start off with that. Developers receive a lot of spam. The more I talk with developers, they really see recruiters as nothing but spam. And I know that's not 100% true, but I kind of want to get a feel for why recruiters think that's like, is that effective towards them? Why do they send out those mass messages that don't apply to the majority? So why as developers do we get that spam?
Sure. So first thing, Don, you mentioned a very good thing in your intro, while we were talking or putting the question together, that recruiters or recruiters, specifically for our conversation, they are and they will be an integral part of this process. Why? So we need to understand that first. So what's going on here is, if you look at the market on, yes, you have your Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 50 companies, and they spend quite a lot of time, honestly, in building their talent acquisition teams. But when it comes to technical talent acquisition, there are a lot of challenges here, in the sense that they cannot find, or they may not find, that level of talent on the HR side of the spectrum who can actually do technical talent acquisition. Now, sitting on the other side, where when you're working on an active project, or if the project is coming in, depending on whatever domain, irrespective of whatever domain you're working in within, as a developer or as an architect, the project needs to go live, right? That's the business need. And in order to fulfill that business need, when the internal talent acquisition department gets a requisition or gets a message from CIO or CTO saying that, hey, we need 6 developers. So that's quite an urgent message, that, hey, we need them, or we need these developers yesterday, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So for the most part, what happens when these internal talent acquisition department get those kind of requests, in order to get the resume stream going in, right, or continue flow of candidates, they have no choice except to contact their brothers and sisters on the agency side of the business. So that's how agencies are still a very integral part of the process. Other thing which we have to understand, that now with the gig economy, right, and with everything going on a freelancing, and not to mention with the ups and downs in the economic situations, most companies like to hire contractual talent. At the same token, they don't want to take necessarily any liability, or they don't even want to take, a payroll responsibility. That's where these agencies kicks in, where they say, okay, you need 5 developers. We will provide you 5 developers. We will put them on our payroll. And not only that, we will make sure that we can take care of all of their other needs. For instance, if it's a long-term contract, most of these agencies do provide you with some sort of fringe benefits as well. Again, that's where they come in. So one thing is clear here, that for the most part, they will going to be the part of this process, whether we like it or not. Now, the spam part. Now, what's happening in the market, Don? If you look at it, most of the technical recruitment, due to the cost initiative, have actually moved out of US. So there are, of course, in every domain, in every industry, there are some good ones and there are some absolutely bad ones. Now, what happens here, that when you started receiving those spams, most of the time, majority of the time, those recruiters are not even recruiters. They are sourcers sitting somewhere outside of the US. For example, many of these companies are situated in India, where
Mm-hmm.
they are working on a different time zone. They're leveraging LinkedIn and other social media outlets, and not to mention your organic or your traditional job platforms like Dice.com, right? Where they would go and pull in your information. That's where what they do in order to deliver, they would do the spam message. They would type one keyword, say Java or .NET, and irrespective of looking at anyone's resume necessarily or cover page if they have one, they would do this blasting with the thought of getting like more fish in their net. I mean, keep it this way. And based on that, they would go and possibly send you more messages with irrelevant messaging there saying that, hey, we love your profile, we need to talk. And again, you were as a developer. I mean, I'm very direct and very transparent in saying that when agency recruiter look at you, most of the time they're not really interested in your background. They're not interested necessarily in giving you a career guidance. You are just a number for them. Because what happens if it's a contractual role, and even if it's a full time role, there's this race that who will submit the most candidates. And in that race, they forget everything else. They literally forget everything else. They look at you as a number, as a submission for them. That's why you get a lot of those messages, irrelevant ones as well, in your inbox, given that it's your Gmail account, it's your email account, or LinkedIn emails.
Okay, that's really insightful. So really, it comes down to they have a job to do. They have spots to fill. They have applications that they need to push out, and they probably have a quota. So I guess my question is, mass emailing versus looking through LinkedIn profiles and sending a message to someone that probably has a higher chance of actually being interested in that. Do you feel like just mass emailing is more effective at hitting those quotas? Do agency recruiters often get more applicants by just blasting that out? That will actually follow through.
Again, again, Don, depending on the situation they might be in,
Okay.
right? Depending on the business model they might be following. For example, see, that's where you can create a distinction between a legit technical talent acquisition or HR professional sitting in the US understanding that full life cycle recruitment in terms of how to build that pipeline, how to establish a connection, how to sell a company, and most importantly, the company culture, and not just the position to a particular candidate versus just making the submissions. Now, ideally, there are some big names here, some good names here who are still doing a very good job, on this contracting front, by making sure that whenever they are contacting these developers, they're sending them the right message, the enough amount of, kind of like breaking the ice message to get the conversation going. Again, most of these companies now here, who are doing the right job, they are US based companies. Like, if I throw some names here, I have personally worked with them. The Tech Systems, your Robert Half, Insight Global, Addison Group. These are some legit companies who have done very good work in this space. They're genuinely interested in helping you out versus just making a submission. I have had seen these situations or came across or heard from my candidates that, hey, this company called me some non-familiar name, based out of somewhere other than US, submitted me for the role in a very reputed company, say in Chicago, and then just vanish. They did not provide any level of feedback in terms of post submission feedback, which is very important in terms of what happened there. You submitted me on last Monday. You didn't give me any feedback until this Monday. What's happening there? Why I'm getting rejected if I'm getting rejected? Again, that's not their forte. They will never gonna do that. So
Okay.
first thing first, I would say to my developers, my emerging developers, my experienced developers, first thing is irrespective of the demographics, irrespective of the economic situation, you will always be in demand. And when I'm saying this with full utter confidence that you will always be in demand. When everything is going integrated, developers, it's a developer's world. It's a candidate market where the candidate decide what he or she would like to do, where he or she would like to get submitted. So don't be afraid when you get these kind of messages, these kind of calls, even sometimes you get calls on your phone. Don't be afraid to ask them any questions popping up at that point in your mind or later after even finishing the conversation before you get submitted. And I mean, honestly, if the recruiter is calling you from agency, you need to ask them first their relationship with that company and then where they are sitting in the equation. Because now what also happening in the market is it's someone else's requisition or opening and someone else is working on it at a tier one, tier two, or tier three level. They might be making $5, $6 an hour in this whole game, or maybe a one-time fee of 15, 12 to 15 grand. So ask them very clearly what is their relationship with the end client, where they are sitting in that whole equation, and how they are playing their part. That conversation should happen before anything else. The moment you get a message or you get a call saying that, hey, I'm representing a client within Fortune 500, you need to ask all these questions from them before they actually even dive into your background. And if they're not giving you any answer there, or if you're not getting satisfied at that point, I would say you can classify them as what I classify them as wrong numbers. They are the wrong numbers in the industry, and you don't want to get engaged with them. You don't want to move forward with them.
That okay, so a couple of questions came up from that. I thought that was fantastic advice. I'm gonna dive into one before I forget it. So you had distinguished a huge difference between recruiters in India and recruiters in the United States. What about recruiters in India are different, or more importantly, like what makes them different? Is there a cultural influence? Is there just does the recruiting sector work differently in India? Are expectations different in India? So, like, what makes India different from the United States in terms of agency recruiters?
Well, I would say, John, it's much more of the nature of their respective jobs. So their job is not to cater you
Uh,
necessarily. Their job is not to nurture you necessarily. They are looking into making that contact with you, number one, and submitting your profile to their client, whether they are operating at a tier one level, tier two level, or tier three level, as fast as they could. So what typically happens that most of these companies have access to a vendor management system. What they do, they would talk to you. Sometimes they would ask you some very private questions as well, or sensitive questions as well, in terms of, hey, I need to know the last four digits of your social security number, your month and date of your birth date, if you will. And then they would
nice.
submit you in that system. So I guess the nature of the job matters the most, what kind of role they are playing. Most of the time, these are not your seasoned talent acquisition professionals. They are salespeople. I mean, where maybe they are um, middleman, if you will, or they are playing that part only where they are getting your resume from somewhere, whether it's LinkedIn or any other job board, if you will. They're looking into the keywords. They're not been doing a comprehensive search on your background. That's why you do see in your inbox, you do see a lot of requirements coming in for, say, JavaScript developer, if not just core Java developer. And you may say, hey, I'm not a core Java developer. Yes, Java is one language I've worked on, but I'm a .NET guy. For God's sake, why are you sending me this? Again, they don't have the ability to distinguish that because that's not what their role is. Their role is more of a salesperson. At the end of the day, number of submissions do matter in their life. How many submissions they can do. And in that whole spectrum, in that whole game, if they could reach out to 25 people in a day, they will do that. Not only that, they will submit all 25 of them, which is not, again, a best strategy, but with the thought process that out of this 25, two, three, or four will click.
Okay.
So that's really what's going on.
Okay, so kind of what you're saying is United States, a lot of companies will outsource some of their recruiting needs, and what they usually look for, probably for cheaper rates, is people that don't have a breadth of experience, that are more just
Correct.
trying to fill the positions, versus having working with a seasoned recruiter that is going to work harder to find a good fit. So I get it. So it's basically two different job roles as you described. Um,
Correct.
I think I understand that part a little bit better. You had actually mentioned a really good question to ask. So I want to dive right into, well, like, what questions should you ask, right? So we, as a developer, you mentioned it's kind of our market. You know what? Before we dive in this, I actually want to ask you a really important question. Do you feel like it
Mhm.
is a developer's market if they are just starting out and they don't have any experience?
Yes, I strongly do believe that. The reason being is part of my role, or I have been very much involved in college level recruitment or entry level recruitment as well, especially from your reputed schools. Say in Chicago, if you look at Urbana Champaign, have a very good program. IIT is pretty good. UIC, you get some great talent from there as well. So what's happening at the entry level as well? See, with you have to look at the historical perspective on that, Don. What's happening is last 2 3 years, you're going to see the inclusion of talent on H-1B visa kind of on a declining pattern. Okay, and I'm not going to go into the argument of why it's happening. Is it good or bad? But with that declining pattern, a lot of workers from tech professionals from India, China, any other countries, they are not coming in, or it is getting difficult for them to even obtain the work permit. What that is doing is putting a lot of burden on the local market, in terms of, hey, we need to hire someone today, and we cannot necessarily wait for this person to come in necessarily from another country, hit the ground running. And that is changing the focus on many companies where they are thinking now, kind of like a cost benefit analysis. Okay, I can get someone entry level from college who might have done a CE or CS major, right? And then groom this person in within our ecosystem, within our technology base. So that shift is now making these entry level candidate or set of pool of candidates very, very important. So yes, to answer your question, entry level talent right now is making a lot of strive and getting a lot of visibility in the market as well. Because they're number one, they're here. They can join. They are willing to join. They're willing to learn. They have the attitude to take the challenge.
I think that's going to be really encouraging for a lot of people to hear, because you do, there is some increased saturation as boot camps start pushing out more graduates, and I think even with Obama's message about everyone, I believe it was Obama, everyone should or not become a programmer, but should learn programming, as kind of like a main
Right.
message from the president. And I think I even saw a huge boost of interest in programming and just learning development in general after that message, which was really encouraging to see. But I think your message is very encouraging because you do see a little bit of saturation. I think people, I do think it's normal when you're getting a first position, you're going to get tons of rejection, probably more than a lot of other professions. But I think people are really going to appreciate hearing that side of things where, um, you know, companies are a little bit more desperate. We don't have as many people coming into the United States, and I know there's a whole process to get that work permit. So it does
Hmm.
sound like, um, at least, for better or worse, people in the United States, it still kind of is their market. It still does give them a little bit of an advantage to get that first position. Does that sound about right?
Hmm. Right, and not, and you know what? Honestly, the school, some of the like the traditional schools or universities, they're doing, I guess, a phenomenal job in putting this in the student's head, that hey, you have a worth. You whatever you're learning in a school, or even folks who are going through these boot camps for full stack development, for JavaScript development, they are getting that message as well that what, do not lowball yourself. For example, if a company is calling you from anywhere and telling you, hey, we offer you an entry level programmer or development job for $20, $25 an hour, you know what? Do not take that, because again, they really are trying to lowball you, and it's you as a developer who need to set up your significance in the market. You are in demand. I'm not saying that entry level folks should immediately ask for a six-figure salary. No, but most of these schools career centers, they're doing the phenomenal job in setting up those parameters. And what are those parameters? Say, if someone is coming up with a 4-year degree and then a master degree, they should ask something, a tangible salary of a developer, and not a BA, or not a QA, as per se. You're going in as a developer. You have a responsible job to do. You have an important, integral part in this whole process. So do not lowball yourself, please. I would humbly request. So again, sometimes it happens, Don. When you're in
Mm-hmm.
the market and you're not seeing that traction, you cannot crack that nut. You get desperate. You get frustrated. You be
Yes.
like, you know what? Okay, I'll take the first job, whatever I will get. I'll say, don't do that, because again, it's you who set up your work. And you have a lot of work. You are going in for something very important. Look at the job description, and then based on that, set up your value. If someone is offering you a entry level development job for $40,000, $50,000 with the promise that, oh, you're going to learn a lot, I would humbly say, do not get desperate. Do not take that job. Because your worth is somewhere beyond that.
And just to give a little bit of respect, or give some context to that, when you're talking about these specific numbers, like 40, 50,000, you wouldn't accept. Is that in Chicago, or is that in a small town as well?
Well, you know what? Irrespective of again, it's not a game of Don. It's not a game of who you are. It's the market for your skill. Again, it is the market for your skill. The more programming languages you know, or you have done, or you have been exposed to, even in the school setting, in your internships, in your respected school projects, the more important you are. For example, if someone is equipped with full stack development language, along with that, some scripting languages, which has been being used a lot nowadays, like Python, as per se, or someone have exposure to DevOps side of the things, like if someone have worked with Docker, Kubernetes, you are very marketable. So it depends on the skill set you are bringing to the table. It's not about, oh, I know I'm a full stack developer. Okay, I know this language or that language. It's the collection of stuff you're bringing to the table. Again, these schools, majority of them, including the boot camps, they're doing a phenomenal job in teaching you multiple domains, multiple languages. So get used to it, and make sure that you are asking for your work. Again, you're not going in Nothing against anyone. You're not going in as a helper, as an assistant. You're going in
Mhm.
as a developer.
I think you do a really good job of instilling the mindset that even, like you said, a lot of boot camps do, a lot of even colleges do. I think the mindset is really what people are going to find encouraging from your message. And as far
Hmm.
as specific numbers to go for, I mean, there are tools like Glassdoor that give a little bit of visibility into what others are making in your area. And I even think like a conversation with the recruiter is really where you can also get some insight that is a little bit more targeted. You can ask recruiters very specific questions. If they're a good recruiter, like it's someone that you're going to be working with to finally get that position. So I think as far as like what specific number you should accept, maybe that's a good question to ask. Like, how much am I worth? How much should I be going for? Do you feel like that's a question you would encourage newer developers to ask?
Absolutely. Not only that, if this recruiter is genuinely interested, Don, in finding a not a job, a career for you. And again, I do this a lot on my side of the spectrum where if I'm working with a client who's say just offering $70,000, I mean, I'm just giving you one example,
Mm-hmm.
for a entry level software engineering job. I would I would be very, very transparent, and I'm always very transparent in my communication with my candidates that, hey, yes, this sounds low here in, say, downtown Chicago, but this is what you're going to get out of this. I've hired people in my career at 70K with the promise that after 2 years, if you're working in this shop, you will pick up enough skills to make you eligible for a Fortune 1 company or a reputed company like Walmart or Amazon, and then you can go there not only with more skills, with a better title, with a better salary. So sometimes, yes, it is a trade off, but again, not many recruiters are in the business of doing it. They would almost call you and put it in front of you. Hey, this is what I'm offering. This is what the company is offering. Take it or leave it. You want to get somewhere there or not? Again, it boils down to that recruiter or identifying the recruiter in terms of who is interested in working with you. And again, I'm not selling anything, but through this platform, I am requesting any emerging developer or any tech professional who's listening to this. I mean, feel free to contact me if you are in a limbo where you can't decide what to do. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn. Again, I do not charge anyone anything for these kind of advices. This has been my passion to work with, especially um, folks who are embracing STEM education. I work with them very closely. I make sure I find them the right career path and not a job. If I'm saying this on this platform, if you are stuck in some sort of limbo where you can't identify if the opposite recruiter have an interest in you or not, ping me on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I will work with you. I will tell you what to do. There's nothing to be afraid of here. You are asking for your skills. You are asking, I mean, the recruiter, if he's or she is genuine, they should tell you what is in it for you. I mean, for me, my candidates are my assets. I remember placing someone in 2005. I saw him last year. I placed him as a software engineer one. I saw him last year in 2019 in a restaurant, in a very informal setting. Guess what? He recognized me, and I was with my family. He was with his family. He recognized me, and today he's the director of the company. I mean,
Wow.
you've got to build that level of relationship. You've got to build that level of relationship. Like we technology recruiters or talent acquisition professionals, we have to respect people like that. I mean, that's what I practice. That's what I preach.
Mm-hmm. That's quite the message. Well, first of all, just I really appreciate the kind offer to kind of help people with their direction. If you don't mind, I'm actually gonna. Are you okay with me making a LinkedIn post to kind of just talk a little bit about that? And I'll link you.
Absolutely. again, whatever, and I'm saying it with all of my open heart. I have done this quite a lot in my career. I mean, I'm very proud to say that I have a 10-year-old son who is in development. He's already doing JavaScripting right now. So I
That's
mean,
so cool.
that's something that and he hears me talk with my candidates when the days when I'm working from my home office. He listens to me. He listens to. I mean, I have one growing up at home. I'm
Hmm.
that genuine in giving someone an advice. I don't do this for monetary reasons. If someone I hired like 10 years ago is going up the ladder, it gives me a very 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 big satisfaction in my heart, in my mind, and that's why I say that I mean, you have to distinguish recruiters versus sourcers versus who is working in your interest versus who is not working in your interest. And it's pretty easy to get, irrespective of your career level. When you're on the phone with someone, you can hear their tone, how they're talking to you. Are they just
Hmm.
interested in taking your resume and moving it from point A to point B, or are they really genuinely interested in learning more about you? At the same token, helping you getting your next role, which could be a beginning step or a stepping stone in your career.
So, you know what? That's a really good question to ask. And sometimes I think people want to know the right questions to ask, but sometimes it is just the tone, the
Mhm.
feeling that you get. Do you feel like you can trust them? Do they have their best or your best interests at heart? I think that's a really good message. Let's dive more into
Mhm.
that. So we kind of talked about some of the
Mhm.
frustrations and where that is sourced from, where that comes from with recruiters. But let's talk about,
Mhm.
like, how do we figure out that we're working with a recruiter that has our best interests in mind? How do we figure out that we're working with a recruiter that has, a depth of experience, and that's going to show in the process of getting you that position? How do we find a good recruiter? Let's kind of dive into that.
Great question, Don. So, as I said, there are always good people and not so good people in the
Sure.
market, right? One thing you absolutely would like to do, and I guess there is a little bit investment needed there in terms of your time. You need to invest a little bit more time with them on the phone. Again, anyone could send you a very smart, very catchy message in writing. Oh, this is it for you. You are that one candidate for this client of mine. You'll do great. Their culture is awesome. What you need to do is to set up some time with them, 15 to 20 minutes on the phone. Again, I know I'm asking a full blown, maybe a developer or someone who might be in school taking out the time. But that is essential because when you get with someone on the phone and you start asking these questions from them in terms of, hey, okay, you have this .NET role available for me. What is your relationship look like with the client? How many people you have placed here? How many years of relationship you have with this client? What I will do here. I mean, ask those questions in that first call before diving into your background. It is very essential that, okay, what's my career path look like? You're offering me this entry level job. What is the career progression look like? Or what is the hierarchy of levels here in this company? And I will explain that more in terms of, some companies have only three levels there, software engineer, senior software engineer, and architect. That would show you as a developer, where you can go in terms of progression in that company. If you tend to stay there for 2, 3, 5, 7 years, what's your progression look like? Ask a question about the culture of the company. That could happen in the second call as well, but the first call, please do make sure you establish that relationship with that between that recruiter, that agency recruiter, and the company they are representing. Again, most of the time, what happens is these agency recruiters do talk to you with no tangible job, meaning they would like to build their own respected pipeline. And once the position pops in, then they could reverse sell you, or they could
Wow.
your resume and say, hey, I have spoken with this phenomenal candidate. His name is Don, and he could be a very good fit for any open role in your organization. That's a reverse sell. They do that a lot as well. So what you have to understand that the requirement or the position they're selling you is legit, is tangible. You cannot find out without talking to them on the phone and understanding their relationship with that company.
Okay, so that's what you mean by understanding their relationship with the company. I kind of
Exactly.
suspected that a lot of recruiters were building up a pipeline. Sometimes it doesn't, like, there just aren't details about a specific position. So that, I guess, that is something to be wary about. Uh, I actually had an interesting experience where I talked with an agency recruiter, and this was going into my third position as a developer. And I talked
Mm-hmm.
with this recruiter, and it sounded like a really good fit. I was transitioning from a front end role into a full stack role, and it was a good conversation overall until we talked about salary. So I really want to dive into this because this is a topic that I talk about a lot with a lot of emerging developers. But what what information? Okay, so well here let's start out with my experience. I refused to give my salary because the recruiter mentioned that I should expect about a 10% bump in my pay. And so
Mm-hmm.
I knew I could get more than that. I knew I was underpaid. I knew I could get more than that. So I was very hesitant on telling my salary. He wanted to focus on the specific amount I made. And so what I ended up doing was, like, that was my last uh, time I've ever interacted with an agency recruiter, and I went off on my own, and I got a 36% bump in my pay. And so
Mm-hmm.
what was frustrating for me was that the recruiter focused so much on what my salary was, and that he didn't really have my best interest at heart in getting. He wanted to get me a good fit, but I also am a little bit. I take a lot of chances, and I wanted a much bigger bump in my salary. So, does a recruiter care more about getting that position? Like, even a good recruiter, do they care more about getting that position filled versus trying to get you to where you're earning the amount that you really feel like you should be earning? So, like, I'm trying to get an idea of, like, recruiters' intentions overall
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to salary.
So typically, the agency recruiter actually it goes for the most part it goes in their favor to get you the higher salary because based on that they get a bigger commission check. But what is important here, Don, is majority of the states here in United States now, including Illinois, including California, including New York, they have mandated the recruiters or HR departments not to ask anyone's current salary. So someone is still doing that, they're against the law. So make
Hmm.
sure you understand that it's a law now. As a recruiter, I cannot ask you, hey, Don, what are you currently making? I cannot ask the specific numbers or the bonus structure, anything, because it has been mandated by the law in most states. You know, not every state is abiding or not every state have to do that. But what is important here is you ask them the range or you give them the range irrespective of what you are currently making. And again, as you said, there could be many factors why you would be making 65,000 right now. You know, where your market would be for 85K. It might be a smaller company, it might be closer to your home. It might be the company offered you more equity versus base salary. There are a lot of components there, right? Which a recruiter would not be familiar with, or he or she doesn't need to know. What is important is what is your worth in today's market. So do not in any situation do not tell them what exactly you are making. Instead, ask them what is, and they should ask you this question as well, what is your salary expectation? If they are asking you what are you currently making, again, they're a wrong number. Do not
Yeah.
do not give them the numbers, or do not spit out your salary structure, your whole package, if you will, for them. Yes, they may negotiate you on fringe benefits. They may say, "Oh, my client is only offering 10 days of vacation." That's fine. You can say, "Hey, I have 15 days right now. I need 15 days." The fringe benefits is a different story. But when it comes to the base plus bonus structure, do not tell them what you're currently making.
I love it. Okay, so uh, I don't know if he asked that question before or after that law did come into place. So that's really interesting to know. So don't disclose your salary. Give a range, or if you are completely oblivious, ask the range that the recruiter is recommending.
Yes, and they should, if they are a good recruiter, they should give you that. I mean, in fact, that's why I'm telling you to get on the phone with them, because in that first 15, 20 minutes, you can really iron out those things, irrespective of, you would like to get submitted. Submission is, in my opinion, is the second or third step. You would like to know first, okay, the company, the stability of the company, the culture of the company, what they are offering, what kind of roles what kind of hierarchy they have available within their IT department. Is it, am I going in as a developer and doing a job of BA, QA, and the whole 9 years, or what's my role there? Again, most of the job descriptions on nowadays, a hiring manager look for 65,270 skills in one candidate. They are getting greedy, but not everyone can do everything, so you have to understand really well in terms of what they are looking for. If they're looking for that 67,000 skills in one person, that might not be the right role for you. And that conversation could end right there with much respective comments saying that, no, that's not what I'm looking for, in my career.
That's a really good point. So a lot of jobs or a lot of job postings do list 3 or 4 languages. Sometimes it don't even work well together. It's like, and the advice that we generally push for is, even if you don't fill all the requirements, you still apply. Like, the expectation isn't that you're going to be a perfect fit. No one is ever a perfect fit, and so the push is to apply. But
Right.
my question for you is, uh, Ahmad, what do you think about learning several languages to make yourself marketable versus learning a single language and going into more depth and knowing it better to make yourself more marketable? Which would you usually advise for
Well,
aspiring developers?
Don, I mean, the advice really there is, make yourself marketable in terms of your comfort zone. And
Okay.
why I'm saying this, because nowadays what's happening in the market is, within the Scrum Agile setting, if you have been assigned stories, you may have to work as there's a new, not that new, but there's a term in the market known as SDATs, software development engineering tests. When you are an SDAT, you are, guess what, you're writing a code, you're doing the testing, all level of testing possibly, on your own code, and then you are sending that code to deploy. It's because of, basically within that Scrum setting, you are speeding up the process for the whole deployment to get shrink maybe in a day or 2 days versus 2 weeks, right? But then really you need to ask yourself in terms of what you are most comfortable in. Again, that's why this whole paradigm got started in the market in the first place. Oh, this he's a developer. He can do DevOps work as well. Not necessarily. Not every developer is actually interested in doing a DevOps work. They would like to confine themselves within that full life cycle. Yes, full life cycle development, SDLC, or whatever methodology uh, or that company is implementing or adopting, but they want their respective role in that whole process. So it's okay to learn multiple languages. It's okay if you are familiar with two strong ones, three strong ones, which could be, again, it's up to your comfort zone to decide. I would not push someone to Java development if someone is more inclined with .NET platform. Why? Because Microsoft does Microsoft do a very good job in providing you a lot of help, a lot of assistance as a developer on those .NET, even like they came up with .NET Core 2.0, which is open source, but still a Microsoft platform, versus Java, something very open-ended, open source. So really, it depends as a software engineer, as a SDET, it depends on your comfort zone. If you have the ability, if you would like to pick up more than four languages, go for it. But if you are doing it just because the market is demanding you to do that, please don't do that. Because what's going to happen is over the course of your career path or your job, you will get burned down. You're going to get burned out. And you'll be like, what the heck? Did I come into technology for this? So there has to be a balance there. As we have balance in our personal life, we have to have a balance in our professional life and in our career growth. Yeah, you know.
Yeah, I love that message. It really is pushing forward with, I mean, quite frankly, like what makes you enjoy coding in the first place. If you don't prefer DevOps, don't just learn DevOps so you're more marketable. Learn what you love to do and be better at it, become better at it, and then market yourself as it. I think that, like, the most important piece of that is you do that so you don't burn out. You do that so you still enjoy what you're doing. And I really think that's fantastic advice. You talk about, like, we even dove into how do you distinguish a bad recruiter from a good recruiter. I think you gave really good advice about that. But how do you, so especially for aspiring developers where they're not getting as many messages from recruiters, as an aspiring developer, how do you find a great recruiter? How do you find a quality recruiter when they're not messaging you? Can you? Are you in that stage of the process?
Yeah, so I think nowadays in the past 2 years or so, as Microsoft has acquired LinkedIn, LinkedIn has become that miraculous platform where you can do a whole lot of genuine networking, and then you can find the right people. I guess, Don, it's all about finding the right players in the game, in any step of your life. So
Mm-hmm.
what I would recommend or advise to our emerging developers, leverage LinkedIn to the fullest. And when I say that, I would say any company, any organization you would like to work, or any industry, say if you would like to be a part of insurance domain, great, try to find the key players in that domain, because that networking will going to help you in finding the right people in your life, in your career. Yes, it may not happen overnight. It will not gonna happen overnight. But I would say try to do networking, especially with in-house talent acquisition professionals. For example, if I would like to be a part of Amazon, very phenomenal company, right? I would, instead of going to a third party, I would go and find people in Amazon. Again, not very hard to do. You can go on LinkedIn, you can start building that relationship, and those relationships will eventually help you. Trust me, most of the time in most of the organizations, the hiring managers, they are very busy. They might not have enough time to go on LinkedIn and build that relationship, so that they can, build their teams. That job is given to conveniently given to a internal talent acquisition or outreach professionals. So try to build those relationships first, and then again in that process, I have seen some hiring managers who are very engaged in the talent acquisition process. They would like to build that leads. They collaborate with talent acquisition when it comes to building relationships with these schools who are offering CSCE degrees. They're very much involved there. I have seen CTOs and CIOs getting involved there, and it really helped both sides. If you will, getting the right talent, and on the talent side, on the candidate side, getting into the right company where the culture is, where people are valuing your skills, where you're not a number, where you are somebody, an active participant in the game. So try to build those relationships. again, I'm not saying do not build relationships with agency recruiters, but most of the time when you have that direct relationship with the HR department, someone in that company, whether it could be a college recruiter, technical recruiter, or someone down the line, that always pay you off. So leverage, again, I have LinkedIn has been a blessing for me. There's the reason why Microsoft paid so much millions of dollars for this miraculous platform. This platform is awesome. It's a one-stop shop for building relationship, doing networking, finding jobs, the whole 9 yards. Try to leverage that, and then for recruiters, I'm sorry, for developers, I would request them to be visible on sites like Stack Overflow, because
Okay.
what's happening now, before Stack Overflow was just a development community. Now you would see they have now the recruiter part as well, or the company is offering recruitment seats as well. So you would see recruiters, even hiring managers getting in there and seeing your work. Get active on Stack Overflow or platforms like Stack Overflow.
That's really interesting because I've always seen Stack Overflow as another way to expose what you can do, right? To reduce the risk, they can get a feel for like where you are technically. I always saw it as something that you would link externally. I had no idea recruiters were actually seeking people out on Stack Overflow. That's
Oh
amazing.
yes. And if I tell you how much Stack Overflow is charging the other side to get to gain that access, you will probably be very surprised. It's very expensive, but it pays the cost. What most companies are doing, instead of giving or allocating that money to or that budget to third party recruiters, they are investing in these smart platforms, and they're giving their internal recruiters really the tools to find these, again, what I call yellow and magenta squirrels. Whether at the experience level, at the entry level. I have seen, just last year alone, I've seen three companies taking that money off from that third party agency recruitment bucket into technologies like Stack Overflow, like LinkedIn. Again, LinkedIn recruiter license is expensive as well, but it pays. It is very justified to have that, because you not only get the benefit of directly interacting with the town with no middle person, you can get the cream of the crop that way as well.
I think a lot of people are really going to find that helpful. I mean, that I definitely learned a lot of new things today, but I never expected that. Well, so agency recruiters exist, and I
They do.
agree. They do, and I agree that before I reach out to an agency recruiter, I'm most definitely going to try to build a relationship with an internal recruiter, and it's probably going to be for the company that I'm interested in. But kind of my final question with agency recruiters is how who should go with an agency, like go through an agency recruiter, and who should do it on their own, and even if that means like reaching out and messaging people specifically on LinkedIn, and building just building that relationship on their own. So who goes with an agency recruiter and who should go on their own?
So absolutely, you know what? The answer to this is very simple, Don. I mean, irrespective of your level, within that hierarchy, if you're entry level or your mid level or experience, and one thing we establish, initially, that they do exist, they do play some part. So
Mm-hmm.
I would not put a limit necessarily on someone that, hey, if you are an emerging talent, do not connect with them. I guess, I didn't say this, but I'm saying this now, that it's almost that trial and error process, right? You connect with someone at the agency level, you see the level of attention, the level of respect, the level of mutual relationship you are getting from them. If you are getting what you are trying to get, just for keep them within your network. If you do not see that, and again, it's not that difficult to gauge that level of relationship in your first second call with them or your emails with them, that how much interested they are in you. I mean, So at every level, you need to keep up. You need to build your relationship with them, but with the good ones. And we already talked about how to identify the good ones. Mostly the U.S. based companies here, they have that level of relationship at the client end to get you in. I mean, again, tech system have done phenomenal job, or they have this army of business development people who are always at the client side, making sure the candidates they are representing get the attention for what they deserve. You have Robert Half. They are doing an excellent job there as well. But with respect to the career level, I guess everyone can get engaged with them. Yes, well, one element here that for the most part, if the companies are trying to fill an entry level job, they may not involve the agency recruitment there. And that's where your relationship as an entry level candidate with direct stakeholders hold a lot of value. The reason being is no company would like to pay 25 grand to fill an entry level role, within their ecosystem.
Okay, that makes sense. So even if
Also,
you,
also, Don,
yeah, go ahead.
Also, one more thing which I didn't mention here is like with all of this game, with all of this, this is not a one-time thing, Don, that you go on any platform like LinkedIn or Stack Overflow, put your name in and get out. It's this whole evolving process. I would say, making that relationships and depending on that referral system holds a lot of value in today's market. What I mean by that is if I'm connected with any software engineer or any tech professional on my LinkedIn, I have done I have been to a point where someone else posted a job and I thought of them as a candidate. I told them, hey, this recruiter in this setting, in this domain, is looking for a job or looking for a candidate. Go talk to them. So that referral base, whatever you
Mm.
build, that always pays off. And it's an ongoing practice. It's not just a one time thing that you went into any social media outlet and connected with 100 people. No, you have to do this on a constant basis. You never know. Even in these time of crisis where companies are laying off, there are companies who are hiring people. You never know who could become that valuable chain in that command to get you your next role. So I would say constantly become make that habit of connecting with people. That those connections are always valuable, always pay off.
I like that. Make that a habit of connecting with people, and it's not
Make a
just.
habit.
And that's a really strong thing to say because people focus on, well, I got to build connections to get positions, but it's really about building a strong habit that's not only going to help you build your network, and as you said, it'll kind of have effects, even down the road when you wouldn't even expect them, but it's honestly a good habit to build for anything in life, just building connections in general, and just, it's, I think a lot of people are nervous in interviews, and they're nervous even connecting over the phone with a recruiter when they've never done it. It's like, build that habit, build that strong habit, and really just get better with your communication skills. And it gets you exposure to the tech
Right.
industry. And I think building your network and connecting with people throughout your entire life is such a good habit. So that's why I wanted to highlight that. I really like that you said build a good habit for that. I just thought that was
Right.
interesting. You know, I think I think you've done a really good job at first of all distinguishing how to find a good recruiter, but also how that conversation should even play out. And
Hmm.
really, I love that you emphasized developers have questions that they should ask. It really, I do feel like it's a mutual fit, but I think a lot of developers feel like it's one sided, like they have to sell themselves instead of asking questions to see if is the recruiter a good fit, right? And I think that's a very
Right.
common misconception with newer developers because they're nervous, they don't have confidence, imposter syndrome is strong, and it's really kind of a tough time, but it is a developer's market, and I think you've really emphasized
Right.
that, and that's encouraging to hear. So, I mean, we could probably end off on this. You you've given a tremendous amount of information about even what developers can do. Is there any last piece of advice on what a developer can do to make themselves more marketable? What can, especially an emerging developer, an aspiring developer coming into the industry, really what should they be focused on in trying to get that first position? What's really going to catch people's eye?
Absolutely. So, I have always advised this to my developers, to my tech professionals. Look at something within your respected domain. Look at something which could become catchy. And how can you look that up? For example, if someone is a JavaScript developer, correct? There is always a new flavor of JavaScript coming in. Like a year ago, no one knew about React.js. Now everyone is using React. So try to get associated with groups, on social media outlets, or try to read a lot in terms of what could become a new or emerging phenomenon within your respected domain. Again, I'm not saying you go out of your domain. I'm going to give you a quick example here. There are a lot of people in my network who were relational database guys, relational database engineers. And then some years ago, they started seeing open source paradigm popping up. So then they started while keeping their day jobs, they started investing in learning the open source databases like MongoDB, like Big Data Hadoop, like building clusters. And while they did that, they not only added the knowledge set within their learning spectrum, they actually made themselves very marketable. I remember many years ago when people didn't know as GUI as emerging scripting language. Some of my friends, some of the people I mentored, I told them start looking at GUI, and they started looking at it. Not only that, they became so marketable that they actually got a job within that respected areas. So try to within your respected domain, within your frame, try to look for emerging things. Like a lot of database people or data analytics people, they were not looking into AI aspect or machine learning aspect of things. They started looking at it when it didn't become a big phenomena, and now they're very marketable. So within your respected domain, look at that new emerging flavor language or a technology, a piece of technology, even a smaller one that could become a phenomena in the next 2 3 years.
I like that. Even if it's, there is this thing where you need to be careful of, spending all of your time looking into something new that can
Correct.
simply
There
drop
is a
off.
balance required there. Yeah.
Yeah, but also, a lot of, especially a lot of experienced developers, I think good ones don't do this, but a lot of experienced developers will kind of just stick with what they know. Even just a little exposure, even just building a single personal project to learn a new framework, to learn a new emerging technology. I I hear that you're saying it's going to make you more marketable. I also think at a certain stage, like you need to branch out. You need to get a breadth of experience because different languages, different frameworks are going to introduce a different type of solution, a different implementation that you might other frameworks didn't really give you that perspective, and it really
Correct.
is just another tool to your tool set, and it's a bonus that it does make you more marketable. So I like
Correct.
that idea of like look on like connect with groups. Like this is a better time than ever to really explore online, but connect with groups that you think are really interesting, and hopefully those groups could be a little bit ambitious in emerging technologies and talking about them, and having a few people in that community that really do dive into that, because I think if you surround yourself with people and go into those types of communities, I think you're just going to be interested in learning new things in general, and it'll just become natural to keep yourself marketable because you're always trying something new. But I like that
Right.
suggestion
And
with,
and and you know, Don, it might be like within the spectrum of your own genre, your own
Mhm.
world. You may not have to go out of that. I mean,
Yeah.
there are things within your own respected world which could become valuable in the next 3 years, 2 years, 5 years span. Keep an eye
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Well, Hamad, that kind of about wraps up the interview. I really appreciate you coming on. What I am going to do, I'm going to stick with my promise. I really appreciate the offer to just answer people's questions, but I'm going to make a LinkedIn post. And do you mind if I actually put your LinkedIn in the notes of the podcast episode?
Absolutely not a problem. And again, this has been my give back to the community in any way possible. Again, I've been doing this for 15 years. I would like to educate people, especially our new Gen Z, in terms of how to get in, how to get situated, how to get the anything they want. I'm really open and volunteer to help, to them, in terms of getting themselves visible, to presenting themselves, anything they want, leverage my experience. I mean, I really want to share and really want to help.
I really appreciate that. I think a lot of people are going to appreciate that. So thank you again so much for that offer, and thanks for hopping onto the podcast. You obviously have a depth of experience that's going to show and that has showed in all of your answers. So I just want to say thanks again for hopping on. It's a pleasure talking with you. But yeah, I hope you have a
Same
good.
here, Doc. Thank you so much for inviting me. It has been a pleasure on your, being on your podcast.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a pleasure. I'm glad we did this. But yeah, stick around for about 5 minutes afterwards. But we'll go ahead and wrap up,
Sure.
guys. If you do have questions and you really kind of just want to even just build a relationship with someone with an incredible amount of recruiting experience, reach out to Hamad. I'm going to post his LinkedIn in the episode notes, and I'll actually make a LinkedIn post as well. But thanks so much for joining us, and I hope you have a good rest of your day, Hamad.
Thank you. You do, Doc. Bye.